Capital Hoops here on the Quarantine Files. Today's guest, Good Counsel head coach GJ Kissal. Coach Kissal, thank you for joining me today. Look forward to chopping it up with you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
So tell me a little bit about what you're doing during this COVID-19 situation.
What I'm doing now? Well, we're doing the distance learning thing at GC. So, holding Zoom calls with students every day, posting our stuff to Google Classroom, all that. Learning that piece took us about a week to get up and running, but now it's pretty easy and straightforward. On the basketball side of things, really, helping out with our current juniors and their recruiting piece, with the change in the NCAA recruiting calendar. I'm taking a lot of calls from college coaches, sending out a lot of film, communicating with those guys, promoting our guys a lot. And then the other thing that we're really working on is kind of twofold, is the scheduling piece, which, number one part is just building out our schedule for next season. And then part two is really trying to get interested teams in our Zavarian Classic, December 4th through the 6th. So right now we've got about 5 or 6 really good teams involved or interested, and we're just trying to fill out those last 2 or 3 spots, to put on a good product. The scheduling piece is kind of interesting this year. I don't know if you've heard, but the league has gone to divisions,
right?
Which is cool. It gives us as coaches a lot more flexibility than what was previously there for us. So if you kind of look at it for a second, so we had a 30-game cap the past 2 years. Okay, so but this year we were going back. They gave us that 30-game cap when the Heights came into the league. But this year we were going back to 28 games. So if you think about it, we've got 20 league games if you play everybody twice. We host our Zavarian Classic. So that's 3 non-conference games right there. So that leaves you with 5. You assume you travel during the holidays, get 3 more games that way. That's 6 non-league games. So that leaves me with 2 games non-league to play with. And we've contracted with Blake for 1 more year. So I had 1 non-league game to play with, really, and what are you getting in? What event are you choosing out of all these events? So for me, switching to that 15 league games and giving me 5 more games to showcase what our guys can do, outside of league was really, really a big thing for us. I'm excited about it.
Will you ever consider playing any other WCAC teams, like the ones that you're only scheduled to play once next year? Would you think about playing, if you have like a rival, would you ever schedule them for a second time?
Oh, that's a good question. I had not even thought about it because, if you ask the guys in the league, I'm sure they're going to tell you the same thing. Like, you're kicking your head in every single night against these guys. So it's a good look to see someone different.
Right.
But the way it played out, like we have DeMatha twice still, we have Gonzaga twice still, but we only have St. John's once. So maybe, I think it would take a lot for guys to want to have to use one of their showcase games as an additional non-league league game. But I'd be open to the conversation. Yeah.
So you're fully in favor of the new format. Do you think is there anything, are you so every year it changes?
Right.
So 1 year, so you could potentially play the same team twice for 3 or 4 straight years. You could potentially play the same team once for 3 or 4 straight years. Do you see any issues with that, or is it
I do.
just too difficult to dive into
Well,
fixing that.
so I think, you know, as a league, the league's gotta understand the challenges that being an odd numbered league presents. And so, you know, I think that moving towards finding that 12th member is critically important. And then you go with, you know, to me, I would support, um, you know, more regional divisions. You know, you can divide it up any way you want, but some sort of, you know, to make the travel just a little bit easier. Um, but the way it is right now, so I'm in favor of the divisions, but the way it plays out, one of the red flags with it, as I'm sure you can see, is like, you know, we're on the odd side of things. So how do you know all the teams that are on the odd side? What if you have a couple teams that finished, you know, let's say they finished seventh, but they got a really young core that's really good and they're going to make a big jump? You know, put our situation this last year. We finished ninth last year. Do you think the teams that are like third, that finished last year third or fourth, would have been happy that, you know, this ninth place team that made the huge jump, that they got to play them twice rather than once? You know,
Right.
who knows? Those are the problems that go along with it.
Right, right. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your upbringing. I know you went to Good Counsel, so it has to be pretty cool to be coaching back at your alma mater. But I know you were a Montgomery County public coach for had a couple stops in the county prior to coming to Good Counsel. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so you know, when I started my career, I started back at Good Counsel, and I was an assistant on the JV, and this was in '95. I graduated in Good Counsel in '91, so I started in '95, summer of '95, '96 season. And you know, our current AD, Steve Howes, was the head JV coach. So we graduated together, we were teammates, and then we started coaching together. And so we stayed together for 3 years, and that was kind of, you know, the heyday of Good Counsel basketball. So really, like, my fetal development as a coach was really at GC, you know, and building those relationships with kids and players that stand today, you know. And so then in '98, '99, I took over as the head JV coach and assistant on the varsity, and that's, you know, the team with Roger Mason, Chris Monroe, et cetera. And what a great year that was. And then my last year at Good Counsel, I was just a varsity assistant. And we had some young talent, but we were still very good. Won 23 games that year. I'm sorry, we won 20 games that year. But, you know, we actually upset. So we had graduated Monroe, Mason, and all in '99. And those guys logged so many minutes that our lead returning scorer the following year, the '99-2000 season, averaged 1.8 points a game. It was Kevin Rogas. We returned this team that like didn't have much experience in terms of, you know, critical game experience. So, you know, we go into this season and this team ends up winning 20 games. And we upset DeMatha on their senior night. And, you know, they started a lineup of Billy Edelin, Jordan Collins, Travis Garrison. It's like, you know, and we had, you know, Omari Israel was a freshman, and we had some juniors and some seniors that were very good. Like Will Morley went on and had a great career at Catholic U, was a very good player. But it was just really a lot of Good Counsel kids and not frontline WCAC stars, so to speak. But it was a great year.
So what happened?
I went down to Catholic U for 2 years. And so I was with Mike Lonergan and Bob Wagner and Marty Moyers was the other assistant, good friend of mine. And, we stumbled onto my first year there. We won the Division III national championship, miracle run. It was incredible. Point guard Pat Maloney was like this 6'2", heavy set, like 200-pound Irish kid from the Jersey Shore that just, was a competitive guy and would take and make big shots and take and make big plays. And that team just caught lightning in a bottle and ended up winning the whole thing, which was pretty remarkable. So I spent 2 years there. And then from there, I left and went to McNamara for 2 years with Kevin Sutton, who was the head coach there at the time. Had some great players like Ty Lawson played freshman, sophomore year there before leaving to go to Oak Hill. Adrian Bowie was a freshman my second year there. AB was a great player. Other very good players like Brian Hodges went to UMBC, etc. So we were really, really good then. Then Kevin left and went to Montverde. I looked at going down. I interviewed down at Montverde with him, but we decided to, because my wife Sherry and I had just bought a house up in Germantown, so we decided not to make that move. So at that point, I went to Bullis for 2 years with Bruce Kelly. But at the same time, I had been finishing second for a lot of good jobs to a lot of good coaches. And I wanted to open up another like pool of schools that I could pursue, the public schools, just because I was ready to be a head coach. So I went back to GW, got my degree in my secondary ed master's in education. And so at that point, I got in Montgomery County and I got the Rockville job like right away. And so we developed kind of our model of building, a youth feeder program. And I was there for 6 years, and they had one season winning more than 6 games in the previous decade.
Wow.
My first year, we got our clocks clean, but I started, 2 juniors, 2 sophomores, and a freshman. And then the following year, we won double figures games and pretty much held that through for the next 4 years. So we set up the school with the feeder program, I-270 program, et cetera. All that got started while I was there. And I really liked Rockville. It was a great place, great people. But for me, competitively, I felt like there was like kind of a glass ceiling. I thought, maybe once every 6 or 8 years, you'd have a team really good enough to maybe get to Xfinity, And then the Clarksburg job opened up, and I felt with the talent they had that the window would have been like every 2 or 3 years, you have an opportunity to get there, a team good enough to get there. So I went through the process, and, I got the job, and I made the move and jumped into a situation where there was a higher degree of talent. The feeder program was already up and running, so I just partnered with the Clarksburg Sports Association to start doing camps and all there. Built a house in the community, and I was set. I wasn't going anywhere. I was, we had been to 2 regional finals in 3 years. I was very happy. I was not seeking anything. And then one of my best friends in the world, who's on the board at Good Counsel, and he's my daughter's godfather, called me and he's like, "Gee, his job is opening again. We've had 7 coaches in 15 years." And he's like, "It's time for you to come home, man. It's time for you to do this." And so I was as skeptical as everybody else was. At the time, 4 years ago, Good Counsel basketball was not very well respected, right? So people are telling me, "Don't do it, man, don't do it." And I went in there with like 10 boxes that needed to be checked for me to make this career move, because I wasn't going to make it with my heart. I'm thinking like, what's the best career move? So I go through the first layer of interviews and start getting some of those boxes checked off where I'm like, okay, well, that could work, okay. So that's how that works. Okay, I can see how that can work. And then I got the second round of interviews, a finalist, 4 finalists. And I stopped by, and you guys have all been to Good Counsel, where we have the old school's floor mounted on the wall, right? And so I stopped by there and I touched the wall and I got chills. And I was like, man, if that's not a sign saying like, you got to do this, and my joke is like, if you do a DNA analysis on that floor that's mounted on the wall, you're going to see my DNA is going to be all over that. Like I took a charge right there. I'm sure I did, you know. So I went in with the president, and I kind of just thought that I would say like, look, this job has some challenges, but it's a job that we can get it done. But I really think as an alum and a former basketball player here, that you guys need someone with a profile like mine, because you got to get someone in this position that cares more about Good Counsel basketball than it just being their job.
Right.
Wants to win because of their ties to the school, not just because they want to win because they're the coach, And so I ended up getting it, and Sherry and I talked a lot about it and thought about it, and we decided to take the plunge, and the rest is kind of history. Year one, we really had no kids that we had brought in, and so we had to kind of sort through how to do things, who we wanted there, and we really, really recruited like crazy. And we brought in this class of 2021. It was the first group of our guys. The 2020s that just graduated, they've only been in our program. But we didn't recruit those kids, so we got to know them right when we got the job in like late May. So where the 2021s, we recruited them for that whole year. And, that's the class that we built the foundation on. We followed this mentality of kind of feeding from the bottom and growing from the ground up that not everybody agreed with, because it's not a quick fix. It doesn't happen fast. But we kind of nurtured our guys and got them playing experience and built their bodies, and they put the work in, and then the corner turned. So that brings me to now,
What do you think the biggest challenges or the biggest adjustments going from Montgomery County Public League to the WCAC were? I mean, I know you mentioned how Good Counsel they didn't have a great basketball tradition when you walked in, but in terms of like gameplay, in terms of execution, in terms of going up against the other coaches in the WCAC that you had to go up against, like what were some of the biggest eye openers for you?
So I don't think there was anything that was like a huge eye opener. It's stuff I expected, but stuff that stood out was definitely so. Like in Montgomery County Public, there are going to be nights where you can pitch your C game as a team, and you're still going to win. You're just more talented, or you're just better than the other team. That's not the case in this league. Like anybody can truly, truly beat you on any night. If you play around, if you're faking, you can get beat. And that's to me, like the biggest piece is you can't afford to have a C night. You can't afford it because you'll get beat if you have that C night. You got to play well more frequently than you need to, at the Montgomery County level. I remember I was talking to the Eric Wallach, who is the head coach at Damascus for football, and he was saying that he had like 3 games a year that they really had to be like up for, and they were really, really good. But that's kind of the same type of thing, is maybe not just 3, maybe it's, if you have a 22 game schedule, maybe it's 11 or 12 games that you really got to be up for, but the other 8 or 10 or, whatever it is, you know you're going to be fine. You know, you're going to be fine. So that was the biggest thing for me. All the other stuff was, I had transferable skills, like the recruiting piece I had done from day one. Even in public school, you know, the recruiting was different, but it was, these are kids in your feeder program that are really good, that have options to go to WCAC schools or IAC schools. So what are you doing to make them want to stay home? You know, and that was the difference of the recruiting, is just making sure you're getting the guys you're supposed to get.
Right. Tell me about some of the more monumental upsets you've been a part of. I was in your gym this year when you guys beat Gonzaga, which, you know, I consider it an upset for sure. But talk to me about some of the games that stick out to you where, you know, you were perceived as a big underdog and you won.
Okay. So obviously that Gonzaga game is on my top 5 all time personally as a head coach of huge wins. You know, Steve and I go back. We started at the same time. He was at Pilates in Newport, and when I started at Good Counsel. So we've been friends for a lot of years. So, you know, I respect the heck out of what they do and the success that they've had in the program he runs. So like that win was really big for our program, just because not what it told everybody else, but more so what it told our kids. And, you know, when you're climbing that ladder, like, it's really hard to, in this day and age, to keep kids' eyes on the prize down, that like, look, I know it's hard right now, but it's going to get better. And for us in our 3rd game of the season, to have an upset like that and win that game was like instant, like, okay, see, you know, this is when we've stuck to it. This is a lesson in that stick-to-itiveness, you know, which is really important. So that's definitely on the top 5, the Mount Rushmore, so to speak. The other 3, if we're going to do a Mount Rushmore, 4 of them, the others that stand out to me, my first year at Clarksburg, we kind of took over and we're cleaning house and had some talent, but you know, when I took the job, there was like, it wasn't cohesive at all. Kids were fighting each other. They didn't like each other. There was beef. There was all this stuff. And so, you know, and I'm trying to implement a new system and get these kids to buy in. And so we played Magruder at our place, and Magruder, I think, had lost 2 games. That was the year they beat DeMatha. Okay, so DeMatha, they had Garland Owens, Nick Griffin, JJ Epps, Whitmer, like they were loaded.
Yep. Yep.
Benta, I think that year was their 3rd straight state semifinal, and they had just won the state championship the year before, I believe. And they lost, I forget who they lost to. They had lost 1 or 2 games. It was January. So they came into the gym and we played really, really well, and we ended up beating them. So that was like this Gonzaga win. It just huge for trying to implement a new program and getting people, kids, fans, administrators, parents, etc., everybody to see, hey, when we all buy in, this can happen. So that game was really, really big win. And then the other 2 are playoff wins. As a head coach, you know, the 2 that I think about are the 2 wins at Gaithersburg in 2016 and 2014, where we upset the higher seed and got to the school's first 2 and only regional finals. And the first one was my 2nd year. With that group of kids that, you know, we had struggled with. They had come together my 2nd year. We were 20-5. So Gaithersburg had swept us in the regular season by like 17 and by 20. And then we play there in, you know, a sectional final, a chance to go to Blair for the regional final. And we upset them in overtime. So That was huge, and that was 2014. And then again in 2016, we were the lower seeded. We played at Gaithersburg again, and that was the team that I had, like Andrew Kostecka, who just finished up at Loyola, and Dallas Marshall was a senior. He just finished up at Washington College. Ian Krishnan, who's at Central Connecticut, was a junior. And we upset them at the buzzer. Our point guard, Jeffrey McInnes, after being down 14 in the third quarter with, I want to say, like 5 minutes to go in the third, we came back, got in the game, and then Gaithersburg had the ball, tie game with like 8 seconds left, and Jeffrey gets a steal, goes the length of the floor, lays it up in a sectional final to win it, and the rest was bedlam, you know? So
Yeah.
those are the 4 of those games right there.
Last thing I want to ask you before we let you go, tell me about some of the most memorable individual performances that you've ever coached and that you've ever coached against.
Okay. So, you know, there's so many. So like, you know, this year in particular, we had a number of performances by our guys. Dejan Waters had a 30 game against PVI at our place, and Trevor Keels had 28. Antoine Jackson, in our playoff game against St. John's, had 26, was dominant. You saw that game.
Yeah.
Bez, you know, had a great game against PVI too, where he had a triple double, just unbelievable. Historical performances, you know, if you ever got a chance to see Chris Monroe play the game of basketball in person at the high school level, I mean, he was so physically dominant as a scorer. You know, we could do so many things with him. You could post him up at 6'2", and he'd have a 6'9" guy on him, and he just was so athletic and strong that it was a bucket. And you could put him on the perimeter, let him go by guys. He was just so dominant. I'm trying to think of one performance of his.
Have you ever coached in a game where a player's scored 50, 40, 40?
40, nope.
What was the most?
Might have been the most this year. He had 34 against Ironton.
Okay.
That might have been the most. I wonder what, you know, the other game that jumps out to me, we played Our Savior New American in San Luis Obispo, California, at a tournament when Ty Lawson was a sophomore at McNamara. And he absolutely, they had a kid, and this is going back, that played at Louisville, Juan Palacios. It was like a 6'8" strong kid. And so he was one of the centerpieces of that team. They were nationally ranked. And Ty Lawson, as a sophomore, just absolutely dogged those guys. And he was incredible. We ended up winning that tournament out there. So that would be another one of the individual performances that just stands out. Incredible performances. Those would be the ones that jump out.
What's the most raucous environment you've ever coached a game in?
You know what? I'm gonna go back to that. Let me. I forget, and I was on the bad end of this. So, Justin Moore, his senior year, we played them tight at our place my third year, and Justin at their place had 18. And everybody's like, I tell people, you know, as a joke, I would say, oh yeah, Justin had 18. And they're like, oh, that's pretty good. You know, yeah, that's good. No, Justin had 18 in the first quarter. And I think he was like 7 of 7 from the floor, didn't miss a shot. It was like, who knows what just happened. But he had 18 in the first quarter.
So tell me about the most raucous environment, the most chaotic, scene that you've ever been in when you're coaching a game.
So, I mean, there are a couple that come to mind. I mean, so, you know, Now Paul VI does a really, really good job. Those kids do an excellent job. But if you look back, if you're a historian and like the WCAC through the 90s, like every place was tough to play. Good Counsel was a really tough place to play because the fans are right on top of you and the kids are right there on the court and they're like cussing guys out and yelling and fussing at the officials and all. And then you think about like going to Carroll back in the day.
Right.
And you're like on the bottom floor coming up those stairs and the cheerleaders are there and the fans are on top of you. It's so loud. Like that was incredible. But Gonzaga in the day with their wall, they used to have those tall bleachers behind, that wall of students. And they've got their chants and they're all, coordinated with what they're doing. And that was a really tough place to play. Other crazy environments. I mean, the 99 season where we played DeMatha twice. We were 1 and 2 in the area, and they had Joe Forte and Keith Bogans and those guys. And, we played both of those regular season games at GW and sold them out 5,000 people at regular season high school games. So, that was crazy too. There's so many good environments in this area. I mean, what to play high school basketball. I tell my players all the time, like, like DC Friday night basketball is there's nothing like it in this country. There's nothing like it in this country.
Yeah, I agree.
You, in your job, you must look at the list of games and think like, all right, well, there's like 6 games that we really want to be at tonight.
Absolutely. And up until a couple of years ago, I had to make a hard decision every night. But now I've got
well,
some
you're
help.
big time now.
I've got some help.
Yeah, you're big time.
Well, GJ, thank you. It was really cool catching up with you, learning a little bit more about you and your history.
Yeah.
And it's been great getting to know you over the last couple of years. And I know you got expectations are high over a Good Counsel next year. So I look forward to being in the gym a lot next year to see you guys play.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. We're excited about where things are going, and we're going to keep growing this thing up. But we appreciate really, Mark, everything you guys do to help promote the student athlete and the game in this area. You do a great job. I remember you kind of coming up through Montgomery County and going to games back in the day as well. So like, it really means a lot to us, like the coverage that you guys provide for our programs. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and be safe. And I'll see you on the other side of the quarantine.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you.